So let's talk a little bit about responsibility. So in light of the insights that we've been discussing, we basically have human suffering and the way out of human suffering. One immediate corollary of this understanding is the realization of responsibility. So if you identify as a separate body mind ego identity, you are in a state necessarily in a state of suffering, and even though you might not be conscious of it, you are in a state of suffering if you are identified with the separate body mind identity. And this subconscious suffering that one goes through causes one to spread negativity in the world, and that in turn perpetuates suffering for others by the chain of cause and effect. So, if you are miserable, you are most likely creating a miserable world, contributing to the creation of a miserable world. So, if one realizes this, one immediately realizes the greatest responsibility in life, which is the responsibility of not creating suffering for yourself and for others. And in fact, all human endeavor is essentially oriented towards this. The typical job is basically the process of solving problems. And solving problems is basically reducing the suffering of the other. So every responsibility in the world is basically about reducing suffering. So since what we are speaking of is the absolute eradication of suffering here and now, the greatest responsibility then becomes to live the understanding, the non dual understanding which we've been discussing of the soulness of the absolute truth or consciousness. So, living as consciousness becomes the biggest responsibility after this understanding has been achieved, because that is the way to live without suffering, and therefore the way to not spread suffering in the minds of other people, and therefore contributing to the creation of a better world. So, the biggest responsibility is to wake up to your true nature, to remove all limitations that you've imposed upon yourself, and reclaim your true identity of pure consciousness.